Hey, you're looking cute today. Subscribe for more, and let's dive in.
The first thing I remember is the hair. It wasn't my hair. Mine was short, practical, the kind you run a hand through once in the morning and forget about. This was different. This was a curtain of fine, dark silk falling across my face, tickling my nose. It smelled sweet, like jasmine and something else, something clean and floral. I groaned, batting it away. My arm felt wrong. Too light, too slender. Sunlight was streaming through the blinds of a bedroom I vaguely recognized. Lily's bedroom. My ex-girlfriend's bedroom. Why was I here? The breakup had been messy. A screaming match in the parking lot of my apartment building 2 months ago. We hadn't spoken since. I tried to sit up, and that's when the second thing hit me. A sense of vertigo. Like my center of gravity had completely shifted. My body was lighter. Significantly lighter. I looked down, expecting to see my own chest. My familiar torso with its dusting of hair and the beginnings of a dad bod I was trying to fight off. Instead, I saw a delicate collarbone, smooth, pale skin, and 2 distinct, soft mounds rising against the thin fabric of a silk nightgown. My breath hitched in my throat, a high, thin sound that wasn't my own. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. They were long, toned, and completely hairless. My feet were small. The nails painted a demure shade of pink. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the base of my skull. This was a dream. It had to be a nightmare, brought on by bad takeout or too much stress over the lottery win. Yes, the lottery. That was it. I'd won. $14 million. The numbers had come in last week, and my life had been a chaotic whirlwind of lawyers and financial advisors ever since. Maybe the shock had finally broken my brain. I stood up, my balance precarious, and stumbled toward the ensuite bathroom. My movements were clumsy, uncoordinated. I felt like a puppet whose strings were being pulled by a drunk. I braced myself on the doorframe, took a deep breath, and looked into the mirror over the sink. Lily's face stared back at me. Not a dreamlike version of her face. It was her wide, almond-shaped brown eyes, currently filled with my own terror. Her small, straight nose, her full lips, parted in a silent scream. My scream. I raised a hand, her hand, with its slender fingers and manicured nails, and touched the cheek in the mirror. The reflection did the same. The skin was soft, pliant, real. My heart was a jackhammer against ribs that felt too fragile. I staggered back, my legs giving out, and slid down the wall to the cool tile floor. I was in Lily's body. I was wearing her clothes, in her apartment, looking out of her eyes. It was impossible. It was insane. But it was happening. My gaze darted around the room, desperate for an explanation, for anything that made sense. And then I saw it. On the small white lacquered nightstand next to the bed, there was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, a note. With trembling hands that didn't feel like mine, I pushed myself up and crawled back to the bed. I snatched the note. The handwriting was hers, loopy, feminine, and annoyingly perfect. "Jake," it began. "I know this is probably a shock. Okay, a huge shock. But don't panic. We've just switched bodies for a little while. It's only temporary. Everything will go back to normal at midnight tonight. Think of it as a little experience. I just needed to borrow you for a day. There was something I had to do, something I couldn't do as me. After I get back what belongs to me, I'll let you have you back. Promise. L. Get back what belongs to me." The words echoed in my head. What was she talking about? We'd split everything 50-50 when we broke up. The furniture, the stupid decorative plates, everything. She hadn't left so much as a stray sock in my apartment. Then it hit me. A sudden, sickening realization that plunged through the panic and landed like a block of ice in my stomach. The lottery ticket. I had bought it the week before we broke up, when we were still together. She'd even joked about what we'd do with the money. "We'll buy an island," she'd said, laughing. "I think we'll start with paying off your credit cards," I'd replied, only half joking. She thought she was entitled to it. She thought half of that $14 million was hers. And she was in my body. My bigger, stronger, legally recognized body. The body with the ID and the bank account access. The body that could walk into my bank and do whatever it wanted. My phone! I needed my phone. I patted the nightgown. No pockets. Of course. I scrambled around the room. My movements still jerky and foreign. I spotted her purse on a chair in the corner. I dumped its contents onto the bedspread lipstick. Keys, a wallet, gum, and finally, her phone. I didn't know her passcode. Think. Jake. Think. I needed to call my phone. I used her phone to dial my number. It rang twice before someone picked up. The voice on the other end was mine, deep, familiar, and yet utterly alien coming from someone else. "Hello," my voice said. It sounded calm, relaxed, even. "Lily." "Is that you?" I asked, and the sound that came out was a high, breathless version of her voice. It was jarring. There was a chuckle on the other end. My chuckle. "Hey, Jake. Or should I call you Lily for now?" "Glad you're awake. Did you find my note?" "What the hell have you done?" I shrieked, my voice cracking. "You're in my body." "I know," my voice said, sounding infuriatingly smug. "Fits pretty well. Actually, a little broader in the shoulders than I'm used to. But I'll manage. I'm at your bank. By the way, just sorting out a little wire transfer." The ice in my stomach shattered into a million tiny, painful shards. "Lily, you can't do this. That money is mine." "I bought the ticket." "We were a we when you bought it." "Baby," she cooed, using a pet name that now sounded like a threat. "Half of everything. Remember." That was always our rule. I'm just collecting what's owed. 14 million. We'll call it 7 million for you. 7 for me. Fair is fair. It's not fair. You broke up with me. You have no claim to it. I was pacing now, the silk of the nightgown swishing around my new, strange legs. I felt a hysterical laugh bubbling up. I was having a multi-million-dollar argument while trapped in the body of a 120-pound woman. Details. Details, she said dismissively. "Look, don't stress about it. I'll be done soon. Then I'll go have a nice steak dinner. Something you can't really do with this dainty little stomach of yours, and then we'll meet up tonight and swap back before midnight. It'll be like it never happened. Except I'll be a lot richer." "How did you even do this?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a rage that felt utterly impotent in this small frame. "This is crazy." There was a pause, and I could almost hear the smirk in my own voice. "Let's just say my grandma was into some weird stuff. She left me a few heirlooms. One of them is a very interesting old book. Turns out, it's full of fun little recipes. This one was for a temporary exchange of souls. All it took was a picture of you, a strand of my hair, and a few words I'm sure you couldn't pronounce." I stopped pacing and stared at the reflection in the dark screen of Lily's TV. Her face. My panic. "You're a monster." "I'm a pragmatist." She corrected me. "Now, I've got to go. The bank manager is looking at me funny, probably not used to seeing Jake so decisive. Just sit tight, watch some Netflix, try on some of my clothes. You might like it. See you tonight." The line went dead. I stood there. Her phone clutched in her hand. My world completely imploded. She was going to steal $7 million, and I was trapped here, in her body, helpless. I tried to scream in frustration, but it came out as a thin, reedy wail. My own voice, the one I used to command a room or argue a point, was gone, replaced by this feminine whisper. My eyes fell on the closet door. "Try on some of my clothes. You might like it." The suggestion was a taunt, a final twist of the knife. I felt a surge of defiant anger. Fine. She wanted to play games. I was in her apartment. She mentioned a book. If I could find that book, maybe I could find a way to reverse this myself. Maybe I could stop her. I stormed over to the closet, yanking the door open, and I froze. It was a sea of fabric and color. Short dresses, slinky tops, lace, silk, and denim so tight it looked painted on. Skirts that barely covered anything. Halter tops and spaghetti straps. And on the floor, a collection of shoes that was an armory of heels, wedges, and delicate sandals. This wasn't a wardrobe, it was a statement. A declaration of femininity so potent it felt like I'd been slapped. And somewhere in this apartment, in this temple of all things female, was a book of black magic that held the key to getting my life back. I had to find it. But first, this nightgown was starting to feel incredibly weird. The way it clung to my new hips, the way the thin straps dug into my shoulders. It was a costume, and I suddenly felt a desperate need to get out of it, even if it meant putting on another one. My search began in the bedroom. I felt a strange, voyeuristic shame as I went through her things, even though my goal was righteous. I was looking for a book. An old, probably leather-bound volume. Something that would look out of place among the fashion magazines and self-help paperbacks on her shelves. I pulled open drawers, my borrowed fingers sifting through neatly folded sweaters and stacks of t-shirts. Everything smelled like her. That same jasmine and vanilla scent. It was disorienting, like being haunted by a ghost while simultaneously being that ghost. The nightgown was becoming a real problem. It was flimsy and offered no support. Every time I bent over, I was acutely aware of my new chest, of the soft weight shifting in a way that was completely alien. It felt exposed, vulnerable. I needed to change. I couldn't tear apart her apartment looking for a magic book while dressed like a character from a romance novel. I needed to feel more grounded, more like myself. I marched back to the closet, my resolve hardening. I wasn't going to let this weirdness stop me. I just needed regular clothes, jeans and a t-shirt. Simple. I rummaged through a stack of denim. Her jeans were all skinny or slim fit, made of stretchy material that felt more like leggings. I grabbed a pair that looked the most straightforward and a plain black t-shirt. Then I went to her dresser for underwear. I opened the top drawer and just stared. It was a kaleidoscope of lace and silk, thongs, bikinis, boy shorts, all in delicate fabrics, and an array of colors from black and red to pastel pink and baby blue. There wasn't a single piece of plain, functional cotton in sight. It was all lingerie. This was a part of Lily I'd never really thought about. When we were together, these things were just part of the package, things I'd see briefly before they were discarded. I never considered the reality of wearing them all day. My hand hovered over the drawer, a ridiculous sense of paralysis washing over me. This felt more intimate and invasive than seeing myself in her body. I was a man. I wore boxers or briefs. This was a line. But what choice did I have? Going commando in these tight jeans seemed like a profoundly bad idea. Gritting my teeth, I grabbed the most substantial-looking thing I could find, a pair of black lace boy shorts. They felt like a spiderweb in my hand, impossibly light and fragile. In the privacy of the bathroom, I stripped off the nightgown. For a long moment, I just looked at the body in the mirror. My body. For today. At least. It was surreal. The smooth skin, the gentle curve of the stomach, the swell of the hips. It was a beautiful body. toned and healthy. And it wasn't mine. I forced myself to move. I stepped into the lace underwear. The fabric was soft, but the sensation was bizarre. It clung to my skin, fitting snugly around my new hips and backside. It was so different from the loose comfort of boxers. This felt deliberate, present. I was constantly aware of it. Next came the bra. I'd found a simple, black t-shirt bra in the same drawer. I'd seen Lily put on a bra 100 times, but I'd never paid attention to the mechanics. I tried to put it on like a vest. That didn't work. The clasps were in the back. I turned it around, fumbled with the tiny hooks and eyes, managed to connect them, and then spun it back around. Wriggling my arms through the straps, it was a maneuver that required a flexibility I didn't naturally possess. I adjusted the straps and settled my new chest into the cups. The feeling was confining, a gentle, persistent pressure, a weight. I could feel the underwire pressing against my ribs. I bent over, and instead of the disconcerting sway from before, everything felt secure, supported. It was restrictive, but also, in a weird way, it made me feel more put together, less vulnerable. I pulled on the black t-shirt. It fit perfectly, stretching smoothly over the bra. Then I tackled the jeans. Getting them over my hips was a struggle. I had to lie on the bed and suck in my stomach, her stomach, to get the zipper up. The denim was tight, hugging every curve. When I stood up, I felt locked in. The combination of the tight jeans and the bra was like wearing a full-body brace. I looked in the mirror again. The person staring back was just a woman, a young woman in a t-shirt and jeans. It was almost normal, but I could feel the intricate architecture of the clothes beneath. The lace against my skin, the wire under my chest, the unforgiving grip of the denim. This was the baseline. This was just a regular Tuesday outfit. The sheer amount of effort and sensation involved in just getting dressed was staggering. My skin felt different, too. I ran a hand down my arm. It was incredibly smooth. No hair. I checked my legs. Same thing. Smooth as marble. The realization dawned on me: the constant maintenance, the shaving, the waxing, a whole routine I'd never had to consider. Okay. Dressed, grounded, back to the mission. I tore through the living room next. I checked behind the cushions of her plush grey sofa, went through her media console, even looked behind the TV. Nothing. Just DVDs of romantic comedies and a tangled mess of charging cables. Her kitchen was small and pristine. I opened every cupboard. Mugs, plates, organic teas, and a ridiculous number of wine glasses. No ancient tomes. The frustration was mounting. Where would she hide something like that? It had to be somewhere she thought no one would look. Somewhere personal. I went back to the bedroom. My new stride feeling a little more confident in the tight jeans. They forced a different kind of walk. A shorter, more precise step. I scanned the room again. The closet, I'd opened it, but I hadn't really searched it. I went back in, pushing aside the hanging clothes. The scent of her perfume was stronger in here. At the back of the closet, on the floor behind a row of shoeboxes, was a small wooden chest. It looked like a keepsake box, the kind you'd store old letters or photos in. My heart started to beat faster. This was it. It had to be. I pulled the chest out. It wasn't locked. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of what looked like dried herbs, was a book. It wasn't a huge, dramatic-looking grimoire. It was smaller, about the size of a diary, bound in dark, cracked green leather with no title on the cover. The pages were yellowed and brittle with age. I opened it carefully. The script inside was handwritten, a looping, elegant cursive that was hard to read. It was filled with diagrams of plants, astrological charts, and what looked like recipes. A tincture for truthful tongues. A poultice to mend a broken heart. And there, about halfway through, a chapter titled, On the Transference of Self. I'd found it. I sat on the floor, the book in my lap, and began to read. The language was archaic, full of these and thous and ingredients like mandrake root and dew from a spider's web. But the gist of it was clear. It described the ritual Lily must have used a combination of a personal item, a physical link, the hair, and an incantation spoken at a specific time. The spell was designed to be temporary. The book was very clear on that. It stated the borrowed vessel shall be returned to its rightful soul upon the stroke of midnight, lest the two spirits become untethered and lost. Midnight. She'd said that. So, I just had to wait, but that meant she'd get away with the money. $7 million. Gone. The injustice of it burned in my throat. I kept reading, frantically scanning the page for a counterspell, an antidote, anything. And then I saw it, a small handwritten note in the margin, written in a different, more modern pen. It looked like Lily's handwriting. It was next to the part about the spell ending at midnight. The note read, to extend the sojourn. The incantation need only be spoken again by the visiting soul before the final bell tolls. The bond will then be renewed and made lasting. I read it again, and a third time. Renewed and made lasting. The words hung in the air. Permanent. The switch could be made permanent. A thought, cold and venomous, slithered into my mind. If I said the words again before midnight, I would stay in Lily's body, and she would be trapped in mine. Forever. I slammed the book shut, my hand trembling. No, that was insane. Monstrous. That was something she would do. I wasn't her. I was Jake. I wanted my body back. I wanted my life back. But the insidious thought had taken root. If she was trapped in my body, she couldn't spend the money. The bank accounts were in my name, Jake Masters. If Jake suddenly started trying to tell everyone he was really a woman named Lily who had stolen his own body, they'd lock him up in a psychiatric ward. The money would be safe. It would still be mine. I would just be here, in this body, as Lily. I looked at my reflection in the full-length mirror on the closet door. Lily, in a t-shirt and jeans, looking pensive. A wave of dizziness washed over me. Could I live like this? Could I be hurt? The internal conflict was a physical force, a war being waged inside my skull. The part of me that was still Jake, the 32-year-old guy who liked football and greasy burgers, screamed in protest. This isn't you. This is a prison. You'll lose everything that makes you who you are. But another part, a quieter, more curious voice, whispered back, what would you be losing? Really? A body that was starting to get soft. A life that, until last week, was just a monotonous cycle of work, gym, sleep. Look at this body. It's young. It's beautiful. People notice this body. I thought about the way the clothes felt, the tightness of the jeans, the support of the bra. It was a constant physical reminder that I was someone else. But was it a bad feeling? It was different. It was a kind of awareness I'd never had. I was always just in my body, like a driver in a car. This felt more like I was the body. Every movement was a new piece of data. I stood up and walked around the room, trying to feel it out. The jeans forced my hips to sway just a little. My footsteps were lighter on the carpet. I ran a hand through her long dark hair. It felt incredible. The dangerous thought began to grow, to sprout branches. If I did this, I'd keep the full 14 million. Lily would get what she deserved, nothing. A prison of her own making. It was justice. In a twisted biblical sort of way. An eye for an eye. A body for a body. But the cost? I would have to give up being Jake forever. I'd have to become Lily. Not just in body, but in every way. I'd have to learn to live like this, to talk like her, to act like her, to fool everyone who ever knew her, and everyone who ever knew me. My old life would be gone, my friends, my family. They'd be interacting with Lily, trapped in my body, probably growing bitter and strange. I'd have to cut them off. Start over. But with $14 million, starting over would be pretty damn easy. I looked at the clock on her nightstand. 2:15 p.m. I had less than 10 hours to decide, to choose between my life and my money, between who I was and who I could become. My stomach growled, a delicate, quiet rumble that was nothing like my usual gut-wrenching roar of hunger. I was hungry and thirsty. I hadn't eaten or had anything to drink all day. I realized if I was going to go out, to get food or even just clear my head, I couldn't go out looking like this. Not exactly. My hair was a mess from sleeping on it. My face was bare and pale, and I was pretty sure I looked as shell-shocked as I felt. If I ran into one of Lily's friends or a neighbor, they'd know something was wrong instantly. I had to do more than just wear her clothes. I had to wear her face. The idea was daunting. I knew less than nothing about makeup. To me, it was just a collection of mysterious powders and pencils that Lily used to spend an eternity applying. But now, it was a tool, a necessity for the perfect disguise. Her vanity was an altar to cosmetology, jars, tubes, and palettes were arranged with surgical precision. I sat down in the little cushioned chair, feeling like a spy preparing for a deep-cover mission. Where do I even start? My eyes landed on her laptop, sitting open on her desk. A lifeline. I typed everyday makeup tutorial into the search bar. The internet provided. I clicked on the first video, a bubbly young woman with impossibly perfect skin. Okay, hey guys, so first, we're gonna start with a clean, moisturized face, she chirped. Right, moisturizer. I found a jar of expensive-looking cream and tentatively dabbed it on. The cold slickness was another new sensation on her skin, which already felt softer than I was used to. It smelled like cucumbers. Next up, foundation. I found the bottle she must use daily. It was the one with the most fingerprints on it. I squeezed a little onto the back of my hand, just like the girl in the video. It was a beige liquid, cool to the touch. The tutorial used a special sponge, a little pink egg-shaped thing. I found one, dampened it like she said, and began to dab the foundation onto my face. The process was methodical, almost soothing. I was erasing the pale, panicked person in the mirror and replacing him with a smooth, even-toned canvas. It was like putting on a mask, but a mask made of skin. I covered the faint dark circles under my eyes, the slight redness around my nose. When I was done, the face looking back at me was flawless, eerily so. It was Lily's face, but airbrushed. Then came the mascara. This was the terrifying part. I unscrewed the wand and looked at the spiky little brush. The idea of putting this so close to my eyeball was nerve-wracking. I leaned in close to the mirror, my hand shaking slightly, and tried to imitate the vlogger's steady sweep. I blinked at the wrong time and smudged a black streak across my eyelid. I cursed under my breath, a harsh sound in my new, higher vocal register. I grabbed a tissue and tried to wipe it off, which only made it worse. I looked like a raccoon. With a sigh, I used a makeup remover wipe I found and cleaned the whole eye area, then carefully reapplied the foundation. This time, I was slower, more deliberate. I held my breath, gently brushing the wand up the lashes. They instantly looked longer, darker, framing the eyes and making them pop. I did the other eye. The effect was transformative. The eyes in the mirror looked wider, more alert, more feminine. Finally, lipstick. Lily had dozens. I chose a neutral, glossy shade. The scent was sweet, like vanilla cake. I carefully applied it, trying to stay within the lines of her lips. The final touch was a light mist of what the vlogger called setting spray. I leaned back and looked at the finished product. It was her. The face was Lily's. The makeup was subtle but effective. The hair was still a bit wild, so I found a brush and ran it through, the long strands sliding out into a smooth, dark cascade. I practiced a small, closed-mouth smile in the mirror. It was unsettling. The person looking back at me was a convincing stranger. I needed to work on the voice, all day. My voice had been coming out as panicked and high-pitched. I tried to speak in a more normal tone. "Hello, my name is Lily," I said to the mirror. The sound was soft, a little husky. Better. I tried to practice a few phrases. "I'll just have a coffee, please." What a lovely day. It felt like an acting exercise. I was learning the lines for the role of a lifetime. I stood up, took one last look in the mirror, and a strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't just about the disguise anymore. Staring at the reflection, I saw a person who looked confident, put together, attractive. The makeup, the hair, the carefully chosen outfit. It was armor, an armor I'd never known existed. I grabbed her wallet, her keys, and her phone, and I walked out of the apartment. The hallway was quiet. I pushed the button for the elevator, my heart thudding. This was the first test. What if I saw a neighbor I rehearsed a friendly, non-committal smile? The elevator arrived, empty. I got in and rode it down to the lobby, a silent, air-conditioned box. The automatic glass doors slid open, and I stepped out onto the busy city street. The late afternoon sun was warm. The noise of traffic, the chatter of people, the general hum of life. It all felt different. Somehow, sharper. And then it happened. I was walking toward a corner cafe when a car full of young guys slowed down as it passed me. The passenger leaned out the window and let out a long, low wolf whistle. "Hey, beautiful." "Looking good," he yelled. My first reaction was a jolt of pure, undiluted Jakeness, anger. I wanted to flip him off, to yell something profane. "Who the hell do you think you are?" But I was in Lily's body. My hand didn't clench into a fist. My face didn't twist into a scowl. Instead, a hot, unfamiliar blush spread across my cheeks. I felt my face flush, a physical reaction I couldn't control. I instinctively looked down at the pavement, pulling my arms in a little, making myself smaller. It was a defensive posture I'd never once adopted in my entire life. I was simultaneously furious and something else, something deeply weird and unsettling. The whistle was objectifying and gross, but for a split second, a tiny, treacherous part of my brain registered the compliment. Beautiful. Someone had just called me beautiful. As a man, I'd been called handsome, maybe good-looking on a good day, but beautiful was a different category. It felt powerful and dangerous. I ducked into the cafe, the bell over the door jingling. The blush was still burning on my cheeks. I felt exposed, seen in a way I never had been before. As a man of average height and build, I was used to moving through the world with a degree of invisibility. I was just another guy, but in this body, I was a signal. I was a target for attention, both wanted and unwanted. I ordered a coffee and a sandwich. My practiced, softer voice working perfectly. The barista, a guy about my old age, smiled at me a little too long. He called me ma'am. It was another tiny shock to the system. I sat at a small table by the window, watching the people go by. I was starting to understand. Being a woman, or at least, being in this woman's body, wasn't a passive experience. It was an active one. Your body was a constant factor in your interactions with the world. The way you dressed, the way you stood, the way you looked, it all sent messages that people read and reacted to, whether you wanted them to or not. And as I sat there, sipping my coffee from a delicate ceramic cup, the dangerous thought from earlier returned. But this time it was stronger, more defined. Lily had stolen my body to get my money. She'd used her power, her knowledge of that book, to take what she wanted. But now, I was in her body. I had access to a different kind of power, the power of being seen, the power of this face and this form, the power to make a barista smile, to turn a head on the street. It was a currency I was only just beginning to understand. She thought she was taking my life. But what if I could build a better one? Right here. A life with $14 million and all the advantages this new form afforded me. The anger I felt toward her began to curdle into something colder and harder. It was no longer about simple revenge. It was about winning. It was about survival of the fittest. And I was quickly learning how to adapt to my new environment. I finished my sandwich, my movements becoming less like a clumsy imitation and more like a conscious performance. I walked out of the cafe with a newfound deliberation in my step. The city didn't seem so intimidating anymore. It seemed like a stage, and I was starting to get the hang of my role. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I had a few more hours until midnight. A few more hours to make a choice that would redefine my existence. But as I walked back to Lily's apartment, the sway of my hips feeling a little more natural, the click of her keys in my hand, I think I already knew what the answer would be. The walk back to the apartment was a revelation. I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The way other women looked at me. A quick up and down glance, assessing my clothes, my hair, my bag. It wasn't hostile. It was just information gathering. A silent, shared language. I saw men look, too. Some were subtle, a quick flick of the eyes. Others were more obvious, their gaze lingering. I didn't feel the same mix of anger and confusion as I had with the catcall. Now, I just felt aware. I held my head a little higher. This attention was a tool, and I was starting to figure out how to wield it. When I got back inside Lily's apartment, the quiet felt different. It wasn't the lonely quiet of a prison anymore. It felt like a sanctuary, a dressing room where I could prepare for the next act. I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. The makeup had held up. The woman staring back at me looked like she belonged in this life. She looked like she knew what she was doing. The inner turmoil wasn't gone, but it had shifted. The voice of Jake was still there, but it was weaker now, more of a nostalgic echo than a commanding presence. It mourned the loss of simple things, the familiar weight of my own limbs, the effortless way I used to take up space, the camaraderie with my male friends that I could never have again. But the other voice, the voice of this new reality, was growing louder, more persuasive. It spoke of opportunity, of a clean slate, of $14 million that would be all mine, with no one to claim a piece of it. It spoke of the power I had felt on the street, a power that was intoxicating and new. I spent the next few hours exploring my new identity. I went through Lily's closet again, but this time with a different purpose. I wasn't just looking for something to cover myself with. I was looking for me, or the new me. I tried on a simple, elegant black dress. It was made of a soft, heavy fabric that draped beautifully. It had a modest neckline but was cut to flatter her/my figure. I paired it with a pair of low, black heels I found. Learning to walk in them was a challenge. I teetered at first, my ankles wobbling, but I practiced. Walking back and forth across the living room carpet, I focused on keeping my balance, on taking smaller steps. After about 20 minutes, I could manage a walk that was slow and graceful. The heels changed my posture completely, forcing my back to straighten, my shoulders to go back. It made me feel taller, more commanding. I sat on her sofa, the book of spells on the coffee table in front of me, open to the page on transference. The words seemed to glow in the lamplight, to extend the sojourn. The incantation need only be spoken again by the visiting soul before the final bell tolls. The bond will then be renewed and made lasting. Lasting, permanent, forever. I thought about Lily. I pictured her in my body. She'd probably had that steak dinner she talked about. She was probably sitting in my apartment right now, watching the clock, feeling smug and triumphant, waiting for the moment she'd get her own body back. $7 million richer. She had no idea. She thought she was in control. She thought she held all the cards. A cold smile touched my lips. Lily's lips. It felt surprisingly natural. She had underestimated me. She saw Jake as a simple, predictable guy, someone she could easily manipulate. She never would have guessed that Jake could adapt, that he could learn, that he could be just as ruthless as she was. My phone. Lily's phone buzzed on the table. A text message. It was from my number. It was from her. The message read, "Wire transfer complete. 7 mil is in my new account. See Painless. I'll be at your place. Door will be unlocked. Be here at 11:50 so we're ready for the switch at midnight. Don't be late." I read the message, and any lingering doubt I had evaporated, burned away by a white-hot flame of certainty. She wasn't even trying to hide her glee. My new account. She already saw it as hers. She felt no remorse, no guilt. She had used me, violated me in the most profound way possible, and all she cared about was the money. She deserved this. She deserved to lose everything. She wanted to steal my future. So I was going to steal hers. I didn't text back. I simply placed the phone face down on the table. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. The view from her apartment was better than mine. It looked out over a small park, a river of twinkling headlights flowing past it. It was a beautiful view, a beautiful apartment, a beautiful body, a beautiful life, waiting for me to claim it. All for the price of a few words. The clock on the cable box read 11:45 p.m. It was time. My heart was beating a steady, rhythmic drum, not with panic, but with anticipation. I picked up the ancient leather-bound book. My fingers traced the words of the incantation. They were strange, guttural sounds, but I had practiced them in my head all evening. I knew them by heart. I stood in the center of the living room. I took a deep breath, filling lungs that felt smaller, more delicate than my own. I closed my eyes. I pictured Jake's face, my old face. I pictured Lily's smug expression on it, and I began to speak. The words felt alien in my mouth, ancient and powerful. They vibrated in my chest, a low hum of energy. As I spoke the final syllable, the air in the room seemed to shift, to grow heavy and thick, like the moments before a thunderstorm. A faint, golden light seemed to shimmer at the edges of my vision for just a second. And then, it was gone. It was done. I opened my eyes. I looked down at my hands, slender, pale, with perfectly shaped nails. Lily's hands. My hands now. The phone on the table began to ring. My old number. I walked over, my steps even and controlled in the low heels, and answered it. "It's 11, turned. 59, my own deep voice said, laced with impatience. "Are you on your way? The swap should happen any second." I said nothing. I just listened to the sound of my old voice, a relic from a life I had just permanently discarded. On the other end, I could hear the countdown from the TV as it approached midnight. 3, 2, 1. There was a moment of silence, then another. "What the?" my voice said, filled with confusion. Nothing happened. "I'm still here." A note of panic crept in. "Lily, what's going on? It's past midnight. Why didn't it work?" I finally allowed myself to speak. My voice was calm, cool, and utterly feminine. "It worked perfectly," I said. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "What did you do?" the voice, my voice, shrieked. The sound distorted with fury and terror. "What did you do? You told me about the book." "Lily," I said, walking over to the window and looking down at the sparkling city. "You shouldn't have left it behind. It had some very interesting footnotes." No, you wouldn't," she stammered, the realization dawning. The extension. "You can't give me my body back. Give it back." I laughed. A light, musical sound. It was the most liberating sound I had ever heard. "I don't think so," I said softly. "You wanted to take what was mine. You wanted my money. Well, congratulations. You're in the body of the man who legally owns $14 million, but you can't touch it. You can't access it. Because you're not him. You're just a crazy woman trapped in his skin." A guttural scream of pure rage erupted from the phone, so loud I had to pull it away from my ear. It was the sound of my own vocal cords, pushed to their limit by her despair. I brought the phone back to my ear, a smile playing on my new lips. "The money is mine." "Lily," I purred, "and this body is mine now." 2. I hung up before she could scream again. I blocked the number. The war was over. I had won. The first few months were a masterclass in adaptation. I, the new Lily, had $14 million and a life to build from scratch. The old Lily, trapped in the body of Jake, had nothing. I heard through the grapevine of old mutual friends that Jake, my old self, had a complete breakdown. He started telling everyone he was really a woman, that his identity had been stolen. He was committed to a psychiatric facility for observation. After a few weeks, realizing no one would ever believe his fantastical story, he was released. The last I heard, she was working a dead-end job. Bitter, broke, and alone. A fitting end. I, on the other hand, flourished. I legally changed my name. Not Lily. That name carried too much of her baggage. I chose a new one, Chloe. It felt clean, elegant, and entirely my own. With my fortune, I didn't have to work. But I was too driven to sit still. I took the raw material of Lily's body and refined it. I hired a personal trainer, a nutritionist, a stylist. I learned about fashion, art, and finance. I also learned how to leverage my new form. I had always been a strategic thinker in my old life, a skill that had served me well in business. Now, I applied that same logic to my social interactions. I discovered that a well-timed smile, a thoughtful glance, the specific way I crossed my legs, it was all a form of communication, a way to influence and persuade that was more subtle and, in many ways, more powerful than the brute force logic I used to rely on as a man. I started doing some part-time modeling, mostly for high-end local boutiques. It wasn't about the money, it was about the performance. I loved the feeling of the camera on me. The challenge of conveying a mood or a story with just a look or a pose. I was good at it. I was a natural actress because, in a way, I had been acting every single day. My social life blossomed. Men were drawn to me. They were fascinated by Chloe, the beautiful, independently wealthy, and slightly mysterious woman. I went on dates. It was strange at first, being on the other side of the table. I understood the game from a perspective few could ever have. I knew what they were thinking, the lines they were using, because I used to be one of them. One evening, I was at a charity gala, an event I had donated a significant sum to. I was wearing a floor-length emerald green gown that shimmered under the crystal chandeliers. I felt magnificent. A man named Marcus approached me. He was older, distinguished, the CEO of a successful tech firm. He was handsome, confident, and intelligent. We talked for hours, leaning against the balcony overlooking the city. He didn't use cheap lines. He was genuinely interested in my opinions on art and politics, but I could still feel that familiar hum of attraction, the pull between a man and a woman. Later, as he walked me to my car, he gently took my hand. His hand was large and warm, engulfing mine. The contact sent a jolt through me, a pleasant electric tingle. It was nothing like the platonic handshakes I'd shared with men my entire life. This was different. This was charged. He stopped me by my car door, turning to face me under the soft glow of the streetlights. "I've had a wonderful time tonight, Chloe," he said. His voice a low, pleasant rumble. "Me too, Marcus," I replied, my voice coming out a little breathier than I intended. He moved a little closer, and my heart, this new, smaller heart began to beat faster. It wasn't the frantic panic of my first day, it was a thrum of excitement. He raised a hand and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from my face, his fingers grazing my cheek. The touch was feather-light, but it felt like a brand. I could feel the warmth of his body, smell the faint, clean scent of his cologne. For a moment, the old Jake in me watched this scene with a detached sense of clinical curiosity. But Chloe, the person I now was, felt a genuine, thrilling flutter in my chest. He was looking at my lips. He was going to kiss me. And the most surprising part, I wanted him to. This was my life now, a life of silk gowns, of powerful men, of thrilling new sensations. A life I had taken. Yes, but also a life I had built. Lily wanted to steal my fortune. She wanted to ruin me and take the easy way out. She wanted to destroy my life. But she only managed to give me a new one, a better one. She wanted to steal my life. But in the end, I took hers, and so much more.